Right, we are live. Good morning, everybody who is watching, and welcome to the very first Indie Author Live chat for SPFBO, the self-published fantasy blog off author panels divided by blogs. I know that might be a little confusing to people who are watching and are like, "What is this?" Because I didn't know what this was until a couple of years ago. That I have with me today three amazing authors who are here representing 10% of the amazing books that are assigned to the fantasy faction blog this year. And for those who don't know anything about SPFBO, SPFBO, it is a sort of blog, sort of contest, sort of competition, all like combined into one, where we got up at the crack of dawn earlier this week, depending on what country we were in, and tried to be one of 300 books that would be assigned to 10 different blogs, all courtesy of Mark Lawrence for hosting. And then those blogs have a set amount of time to go through the books to find finalists that they would like to put forward for everybody to read. And then they read them and review them. And it's a big, long process. But out of those 10 blogs, Fantasy Faction is one. And so we have CL Jarvis, we have Michael, and we have Phil on today. Why don't you guys tell everybody a little bit about yourself and the kind of fantasy books that you write?
I'll go first, I guess. My name is Michael Roberti. I entered my book, The Traitors We Are. It's mainly a political intrigue fantasy with a lot of other elements, but it takes place in a world where everything that somebody writes down when they die disappears. And that's something that I try to explore in the book. It's not a main focus on this particular novel, though it does show up a lot. And in later books, I'm going to try to delve more into how that impacts history and invention and stuff like that. But I'm kind of intrigued by, like, what do we know about history? How do we know it? Because even with our world, inventions are lost, history is lost, the Dark Ages and stuff like that. So that's something that I like to look at.
Do you want to go, CL?
And you got a beautiful cover on it too.
Oh, thank you.
CL, how about you?
Yeah, so my name's Claire. I've entered my debut novel, The Doctrines of Fire, into SPFBO this year. It's a historical fantasy / dark academia novel that's set in Edinburgh in the late 18th century. It's the hopefully going to be the first of a series, sort of, I guess, kind of a mystery / crime element to the fantasy. Doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a lot of fun to write and to research.
Yes.
Okay, shall I go?
And Phil?
Yeah, I'm Phil. I've entered Dire Street Punk Witches this year, which is a book from my Ordshaw series. This is a standalone one with all new characters. It's just set in the same city, which is actually the 7th book I've set in this universe, which is all contemporary fantasy. A bit different to I always put it under the urban fantasy umbrella because that's the most general one, but I'd put it more in contemporary fantasy because it leans more towards sort of crime, thriller, horror elements than a lot of the regular urban fantasy tropes. And Dire Street Punk Witches is very much like a crime thriller. It's about a woman who's got a criminal past coming back to haunt her, as it were, but she's getting involved in sort of the gang disputes in Ordshaw. But the twist being she used to be a witch and she used to be a punk, and now she's a local activist and getting all mixed up in local affairs and generally a bit of a troublemaker. So it's quite a fun book.
Wow. So we've got 3 sort of very different subgenres of fantasy represented. Oh, hi, Kitty. I feel like, what a beautiful cat. Oh, goodness. And we've got people on. Hi, HC. Hi, Steve. If you're watching live and you have questions, drop them in the comments. I can pull them up on the screen. And if you're watching and you're like, I don't know these authors yet and I don't know their books yet, the links to all of those are in the description box. below. But we were talking a little bit before we went live about sort of the blogs and how we were assigned to those blogs. We don't get a say in which blog we're in. I'm not really sure. This is my first year how that blog assignment works. But we were talking a little bit about how we feel being in the blogs with the different bloggers. And as I said at the beginning, you guys are all in the Fantasy Faction blog, which I'll put the link for up on the screen in case anybody wants to give them a follow to see what they think of these different books. I know that Fantasy Book Critic and a couple of the others have different judges within the blogs, and they split the books up into like these mini, I almost feel like they're mini competitions, like they get to pick one. Do you think that's how it works in Fantasy Faction as well? Is this your first year doing SPFBO?
So what I've seen of how Fantasy Faction did things last year, they do have a pool of reviewers who I think they all pitch in, and then they kind of decide amongst themselves like how they're going to, which ones they're going to cut, and then they rank their semi-finalists. So I know that some blogs kind of push out reviews as they read through them, whereas I think Fantasy Faction kind of waits and does a compilation.
So you have the added pressure of having to wait for the compilation to come out. Yeah. How about you, Phil? Is this your first year or multiple years?
It's not. No, this is actually my, I think, 5th year. I was I was going through this the other day. Yeah, it's been an interesting one. I think it's interesting to be in Fantasy Faction because it's not one I've been in before. I think each year I get in a different one. So my master plan is keep doing it, and in 10 years' time I'll get a review from every blog, and then it'll be like being a finalist. No, yeah,
a punch card. Like,
yeah. But they keep bringing in different reviewers though, so it's not working.
At the end of 10 years, you're like, "Hey, Mark, what do I get for having been in every blog?"
I'm not sure it's the best strategy, but
we need to design like the gauntlet shirt for SPFBO. I've run the gauntlet. But that would also mean putting out a new book once a year for 10 years. Too.
Yeah, I'm slowing down a bit. It's becoming harder.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the blog you're in this year compared to previous years? Is this sort of your go-to genre that you've got this year?
Oh, I've always entered, actually. I think all but one of my books has been from this series, so I've always entered these contemporary fantasy. I'm never too sure that they're the best fit for the competition as a whole, as it were. But you never know, do you? What's going to click with someone? And to be honest, the first year I did it, I did surprisingly well, probably the best I've done in all of the years, and that was with another contemporary fantasy. And the book that beat me to get to the finals was Craig Schaefer's, which was another urban fantasy. So as far as Fantasy Faction goes, I'm not too sure where they're I mean, they've got a diverse group of reviewers, so you don't know, they've probably got different interests. I'm not sure what kind of genres they lean to most.
Michael, how about you? I know I've seen your name around the community. Is this your second year?
No, this is my first. Traders We Are came out in February of last year, but I didn't know anything about anything. I just got mad at querying because it just was not a really fun process, and I just clicked submit one day on KDP, and then I just kept like grinding, and I met people along the way. I think the first I heard about this was maybe from Dan Fitzgerald, because he was a judge last year, and I was on a weeknight writers panel that he hosted it, with Diana Gunn as like the person putting it together. And I think Angela Board was there, and I think maybe there's a couple other people. I think Crystal Matara was supposed to be on there, but she wasn't able to. But yeah, so I heard about it from that, and I kind of kept an eye on the proceedings. And then Andrew Meredith, I met him through liking Thrice a lot and just like pestering him, and now we're friends. And he told me how the things work. So that's the only reason I know anything,
Yeah, and I've got to shout out Andrew too. Andrew and K.E. Andrews.
Yeah.
both have been just wells of information. And when I was debating whether or not to even put a book in, they were just like, what's the worst that can happen if you put something in? It doesn't go anywhere, but you still have a great community. And they were absolutely right. So if you're watching this and you're a writer and you haven't put a book in, try to put a book in. Setting restriction with the querying. Yeah. I think a lot of us authors are like, okay, I've got to do the work either way. So
Yeah, might as well just do it.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. And Claire, how is this? You said you were a part last year too, right?
No, I watched from the sidelines last year. I'm trying to remember when I first heard about SPFBO, and I can't remember, but I think it was like a year and a bit ago. I kind of like I was writing last year, so sort of following along and seeing kind of what the experience was like.
Yeah, Mark, Phil writes very short books.
Oh.
Thank you for joining. It's such an honor to have you.
I think he means that literally, though. Because my book cut him.
Oh, and hey, Tall Squall, good to have you on. Yeah, so I feel like being a newbie, and it sounds like Michael, your first time doing it, Claire, your first time like really doing it too. But although you came in with maybe more knowledge than I did, I was shocked at how fast everything filled up this year. Were you guys up like with your finger on the submit button, waiting to go?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was ready to go. I didn't think you'd need to be. I was really surprised because I've watched it each year. It's sort of you get a good few hours of grace. I thought.
Yeah, everybody was like, it took 9 hours last year. It's not the end of the world, but I got up and dragged myself out of bed to be on Andrew Meredith's like live launch party, and I was so glad I did because it was just so fast. Oh, good luck to you. Well, first time. If you're watching and you're an author, drop your book in the comments and I'll pull it up on the screen, because really the community has been the best part of being in SPFBO. Really is meeting all these new authors, and my TBR list is sad and crying because it's like crushed. One of the questions I had for you guys though is, how did you decide which book you were going to submit this year? I mean, Phil, it sounds like you're just getting enough.
It's easy. It's whichever one's available at the time. No, I was quite fortunate in that this is the only one I had that I hadn't entered so far. I've got another one on the way that fortunately wasn't published in time, because that would have been a tough choice.
How about you, Claire? How did you decide?
Well, Doctrines is my debut novel, so there's not much choice. But I mean, I'm thinking about like my publishing schedule for the next 12 months, and I have a book that I kind of want to chance my luck with next year. So I'm thinking about like when that would need to be published to be eligible.
Anytime before June 1st, right? Yes. How about you, Michael? You've got the one, right?
Well, I do have the one. I have a shorter novella, but it would be, I forget what the cutoff was, but it's only 30,000 words. So it might be, I know that they're talking about on Twitter doing Baby Bow for the novellas next year. And I'm like, that is exciting. But yeah, this is the only book I have so far. And similarly, I've been like looking at like, what is my publishing schedule like? Could I like realistically put something out for next year? Because I have the sequel to Traitors pretty much mostly the bare first draft is almost done, and I can usually draft pretty fast after that. But I'm just wondering, like, will I be able to like really push it? I don't know that I can.
Yeah, it's a lot because you're writing, you're editing, you're getting the covers, you're getting it formatted and all put together for this, especially when the competition is so stiff. Community has been amazing. Baby Bow. I've got a couple novellas too, but I think they're all sequels to things. So I don't know that I have any that really count. So one thing though that I think is interesting, I'm going to let you guys talk about your main characters. As I was looking at your books, and even though some of the genres things are different, there's definitely some similarities about your stories. So I was wondering if you would share for the people who are viewing a little bit about your main characters, what kind of person they are, and what their quest is over the course of your books.
Shall I go first?
Go ahead, Phil. Take it away.
Okay, so I've got my main character is, I described her a little bit before, is Kit. So the story takes place over a kind of, it's got a slight split narrative where you've got a bit from her past and a bit from the present, but mostly it's her as a sort of a middle-aged woman taking care of a magazine. And she grew up with a group of friends who were part of a punk rock group, but also witch coven. And they got involved with this gang of criminals. So her quest in this book is, this is sort of some 20 years later, and that's all long behind, but it's coming back because some of the criminals are coming back after her. Her quest is to kind of figure out what exactly is going on in her town that's targeting her. There's like a new big bad out there, and why. And over the course of that, she's basically atoning for what she went through in the past. You know, she's made a lot of mistakes and keeps making mistakes through the book, so she's pretty flawed. But the flip side of that is that she makes the mistakes because she's a very, how should we say, forceful kind of woman. She's not shy. So, yeah.
Yes. How about you, Claire? Tell us a little bit about your main character.
Yeah, so my main character's name's George. He's a first-year medical student at the University of Edinburgh in 1779. And to use modern terminology, you'd call him a first-gen student or a mature student. He's kind of come from a poor background. He's been a soldier, and he comes to what's it's basically the most elite medical school in the world at the time, and he's just totally out of his depth. And he's quite shy, and he doesn't really have like the social airs that his more affluent classmates have. So he gets dragged into a murder mystery where students are dying in kind of freaky circumstances, and he's got to kind of find some self-confidence from somewhere and kind of take advantage of the skills he's got and learn how to navigate the academic or upper middle class setting.
So we've got different age ranges, but still, I think, very character focused stories. Michael, how about yours? How about your main character?
Sure. Actually, I want to say, Phil, like I saw the description of your book and I was really drawn to the whole punk thing with it. I think that might be one of the neatest things I saw as I was like glancing through the list. And I didn't realize I didn't put two and two together because I'm really bad with names, but I think that's a really neat idea. And I just wanted to
got a very ordinary name too.
But, I mean,
very ordinary name.
I mean, like I'm really bad with names. But yeah.
Well, you were only thrown 299 of them.
True.
That is like, here's 299 new authors and books. Good luck.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like, you know, our eyes go to the names that we know in the list, and you know, like also like the people you don't want to be paired up against. My book, The Traitors We Are, focuses primarily on three characters that are given roughly equal billing. It starts with Cale Oberlin, who is a member of a religious and ethnic minority in a kingdom that is rising up against the king. He's watching his best friend die. We're at the tail end of the war, and he's very disaffected, very like, you know, it's not what he thought it was going to be. And he finds out not only does his best friend die that day, but he finds out his older brother, half brother, who's not super close with his dad. And now his dad, who's the instigator of the rebellion, is naming him as his second in command. And then we switch to his little sister, who's not that much younger than him. And she was engaged to his best friend. And now, you know, she gets a letter from the front. It's blank because the words disappear when people die. And she's not sure who it's from. Is it from her half brother? Is it from her fiance? And there's a lot of, you know, questions that she has about like, what does this mean for the future? And then we also have the other main character is Emil Trestenson, who's the man who killed their brother, which you might think, oh, it's going to be a brutal warrior, but he's really a foppish, horrible noble that was unprepared and ostensibly got lucky, right place, right time type thing. And he is obsessed with the idea that he's going to be a hero. And he's like, everybody's been doubting him his whole life because he's just, a prop, basically. He's just a rich little boy. He's in his mid-20s, I guess, at this point. And he decides, he gets really drunk as they're trying to ship him back out home to keep him safe, and decides to go fight in a battle. And he hides in the back of a cart. And that's kind of where the inciting events kind of come from for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Steve hit a little bit on it here. He loves that so many of your works have horror elements. There are definitely some dark elements in all of these books. But what I love about fantasy books that are dark is that the characters grow so much. Not that they don't grow in like a noble, bright fantasy, but when you see somebody faced with the absolute worst, sometimes it brings out the absolute best that they can have, and they just don't know it. And so all of these books have great character growth. I can tell just by looking through the book very quickly, because I'm going to try to do something and like read all the SPFBO books over the next year. Knock on wood. I've already read a lot of them as a disclaimer, so I was like, it's not going to be 300 books, but I was just like, I'm going to start with Fantasy Faction actually. And when I was looking through the books, I was going, there's some great character development in the books this year in your blog, and super excited to read the full thing. But yeah, so what was your impression this first week going in? Phil, do you think this year is going to be a tighter competition than past years?
It seems to be getting tighter every year, so I would probably not discount it. Yeah, it's getting tighter. I'd say I recognize less of the names this year, so I think that's a great thing, because it means it's drawing more people in. It's getting more new people to be exposed to. So I couldn't say necessarily who to look out for at the moment, but I can only imagine it's getting better. I mean, just going by the covers, I would say the quality of the covers across the whole competition is fantastic at the moment. It's really showing out that indie authors are really pushing the bar with their covers these days. It's brilliant. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be tough. Like, I think it just only gets tougher. So,
Well, how do you guys feel, Michael, Claire?
So like the first week or few days, it's been like the internal managing my own emotions, which are kind of like up and down. So I'm hoping like over the weekend to kind of like pick out which books I want to read and which ones I'm like most interested in. It seems like there's just so much variety, like different genres and aimed at different age groups. So it's going to be something for everyone, and I'm sure it's very subjective what the judges will go for, which kind of makes me feel a bit better about it.
Yeah. Because even at the end of the day, if your book isn't their ideal book, seeing what it is that they loved or didn't love can help your book find ideal readers, I sort of feel like. So I'm excited. And I agree on the emotions 100%. Being a fellow newbie this year, I feel like it's this huge wave of emotions. So super excited. And then I see the names and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my book is in there with names like these. And then, coming back to, okay, it's all an even playing field. And it really is. I've looked back through some of the past finalists, and it's not about how many reviews they had going in or how many awards they had going in or whether they were bestsellers before they were going in. It was truly about the merit of the books and the preference of the bloggers who picked them up. Steve, I'm terrified as a newcomer. Don't be terrified. We're in this together. How about you, Michael? How are you feeling this first week?
I've just getting in to me like was a big thing, because I know some people said we talked about getting in, and I was ready with my finger on the button. I was convinced that it was going to fill up really quickly because I kind of have a fatalistic approach to some of this stuff, which is, I know, not the best, but it's just kind of how I am. So I was like, okay, hopefully I get in. So getting in, initial relief, really cool to see how many people I know in here. Like, you know, Katie Andrews, talk to her sometimes. Yuval, in his cover, speaking of amazing covers, looks fantastic. And, you know, just that's nice and comforting. And then the people I haven't known, like a lot of you guys in the comments, are really cool. You know, super supportive. I haven't seen anybody be like an egomaniac or anything, which I was kind of like cautious about because I know sometimes authors can get, you know, big heads pretty quickly, but, you know, everybody's been really cool, like really, really cool. So I alternate between like really cautious optimism of maybe I won't do too bad and utter like, oh man, my book starts with a line about porridge, I'm gonna get cut immediately, you know?
No, we like food. We eat food.
Yeah.
Especially with all these epic fantasy writers. I'm like, ooh, they thought of food first. Oh, goodness. I think it's neat how many folks are reading along with the blogs. Yes. And hopefully we'll rate and review them. Yeah. Not everybody has to try to read all 300 books, of course, but there's plenty on there worth picking up. And the current covers that have been chosen for finalists by the blog, since we were talking about covers, are already up on Mark Lawrence's blog. Here's the link here. If you're watching live, you can just click on that link. But Mark Lawrence's blog is worth following if you're interested in SPFBO, whether you're a participant or not, because that's where all the juicy news about who makes cuts and all that is going to go. An opening line about porridge would be an insta-buy for me.
I appreciate that.
Yes. So, last question, and this is really going to be for people who have not met you yet, I guess, because if you already know them, then you probably already know the answer. What are you going to be working on for the next 5 months while we wait for answers? Do you have lives, more books you're writing? What's going on? Michael, you want to start us off this time?
All right. Well, I'm a high school teacher, so I'm going to be having our summer break starts in 2 weeks. But I also teach driver's ed, so I'm going to be doing that as well. But I've got A Grave for Us All is the sequel to The Traitors We Are. It's at about 80,000 words. It could go anywhere from 120 to 160 is what I'm thinking. I like to keep it a little bit lean because I'm not a big fan of pages and pages of filler. I mean, I do add, you want to have the internal lives of the characters, but I do like really quick, snappy prose a lot of the time. And then I also want to start working on, I have a rewrite I want to do, the first book I ever tried to write. It's going to be called The Unclaimed Girl. And it's about a girl who wakes up one morning and her brother is gone and nobody remembers him and his room is gone, but his signature is still in the family's book where they keep the signatures because it's in the same world as The Traitors We Are. Obvious. And they're like, oh, this is not a funny prank. Why are you messing with it? Hey, what's up, Andrew?
So you've got a new book you're working on, and do your students know that you're writing? Do they know this contest is going on?
They're probably vaguely aware of the contest. I think I've had one student actually read the book. I mean, this is a sad thing. Like I have a class library. I try to put books in people's hands. I don't push my books on them because I kind of have like an ethical thing with that. But like, for instance, if I gotten at least one kid to pick up Thrice and read it all the way through, and one other kid took it home with them. And then I've got like The Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno. I'm trying to get people to pick up because I just listened to the audiobook and that's amazing. So I have that in there. What was the other one? Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. So like I've been trying to put some indies in there, and I used to have a lot more kids pick up books, but it's hard lately, and that's something that really concerns me is the lack of literacy and the lack of the wanting to do. But hey, if you guys are indie authors and your book is high school appropriate, and if you have to ask me what that means, I'm kind of okay with explaining it to you. If you want to sit, I didn't think yours was. But if you're
on the high school, I guess.
I mean, like that's why I tell kids and parents and stuff. It's like your kids are on TikTok all the time. Why are you upset about this book? But it is what it is.
It's how they learn, isn't it?
How about you, Claire? What are you going to be working on the next 5 months?
So I'm still writing the sequels to the Doctrines. The next book is hopefully coming out in fall. And there's another prequel that I'm at the editing stage of. I think it's going to be mostly writing and some more writing.
Mm-hmm.
And try to do reading of some of the other books as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Phil, you got...
Yeah, I'm on the cusp of finishing a completely different kind of book at the moment. I've done a proper epic fantasy, it's a dark epic military fantasy book that I'm doing, and it's set in a slightly different era. It's in a kind of World War I era, big global scale war, following a platoon of female soldiers as they go behind enemy lines and fighting lots of monsters and such. And it's almost done. I'm pretty excited about releasing that one, but as I say, it wasn't released in time for this, which is handy. It didn't make me choose, but that'll be around next year. And then in the meantime, I've got half a dozen other books I'm probably working on, and in the background I do editing as well, so I'm getting a bit more into that at the moment, editing for people.
Yeah, we got to pay the bills.
Yeah,
all of us indie authors, we got to pay the bills. Andrew says, I can't wait to read Bruno. Yes. And if you're watching and you want to see these books and all the other books besides Phil and Michael and Claire's, which are in the description box, Zach has created a great list. And there's another one running around too. But Zach's created a great list of all the current books and the blogs that they're in, and you can filter them by audiobook if you're looking for audiobooks. And you can filter them by KU if you're looking for KU books, and you can see all the pretty covers. But that's at zachargyle.com/SPFBO-9. Don't forget the 9 on the end. And you can also see the books from past years on Zach's website too. So I will be using that to go through and do my crazy bit of reading for the next year. But this is only the first blog for the fantasy faction authors. There is another panel tomorrow for another group of fantasy faction authors that you can meet. And I'm trying to get these blogs put together for the other groups as well. So if you're watching and you didn't know we were doing these, feel free to send me a message either at contact@katherinedgraham.com as an email or on one of my social medias. I'm on pretty much everything, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And I'll send you the link and we'll get you all signed up to represent your book and your blog. But it was been such a pleasure meeting all of you. Thank you all for joining and submitting your book and sharing with us about your books. I'm super excited to read them.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us.
Thanks for hosting. It's no trivial undertaking.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, and really good luck to all of us.
Oh, and you too, yeah.
Thank you. Good luck.
This is a great, great competition, and I know Mark is on. Thank you for hosting. I know this can't be a small thing that you're doing and a labor of love since this is free for the authors. So thank you for pouring your heart and soul into it. But if you'd like to see replays of past indie author live chats that I've done, you can click the link in the description box to see the playlist for those and hit subscribe to be notified on the next live. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice to meet you all.